In 2019, a farmer's son from rural Australia was running one of the most powerful finance companies on the planet. He had a medal from the Queen, a former prime minister working for him. $7 billion in valuation. By March 2021, it was all gone. $10 billion of ordinary people's money was frozen overnight. And the man responsible? He kept his house. He kept his medal. He walked free. So how did a boy from a sugarcane farm fool the entire global financial system? Bundaberg, Queensland, Australia. Red dirt, extreme heat, sugarcane as far as the eye can see. Lex Greensill grew up watching his parents struggle, not because they were bad farmers, but because the corporations that bought their crops waited up to 2 years to pay. His family delivered the goods. Then they waited. That experience never left him. Lex put himself through law school by correspondence, clerking during the day, studying at night. At 24, he moved to London with almost nothing, earned an MBA, and landed jobs at Morgan Stanley and then Citigroup. Inside those banking halls, he found a product that felt personal: supply chain finance. To Lex, it wasn't just a financial instrument, it was a mission. Here's how it worked. You're a small factory owner. You've delivered products to a massive corporation. They'll pay you in 90 days. But your workers need to be paid this Friday. Greensill steps in, pays you today, and collects from the corporation later. He takes a small fee. You keep your business alive. Genuinely useful. For millions of small suppliers around the world, it was. In 2011, Lex left banking and founded Greensill Capital. By 2019, the company was financing $143 billion in transactions across 175 countries for more than 10 million customers. Masayoshi Son, the same man who bet billions on WeWork, pumped $1.5 billion in through SoftBank. Valuation: $7 billion. In 2017, Queen Elizabeth gave Lex a CBE for services to the British economy. Then he hired former British Prime Minister David Cameron as a senior advisor. If you were an investor looking at all of this, you'd think this was the safest bet in the world, and that was exactly the point. The original product was real. It worked, but it wasn't big enough. Not for a $7 billion valuation. Not for SoftBank's growth expectations. So the product quietly evolved. In the beginning, Greensill financed real invoices. A delivery had happened. Money was owed. The paperwork existed. Safe, boring, verifiable. But then Greensill started financing future receivables, payments a company might receive from clients they might do business with, in deals that hadn't happened yet. It's not, I lent money against a real delivery. It's, I lent money against a delivery that might happen someday. And it got worse. A massive portion of those future receivables were tied to one single client, steel magnate Sanjeev Gupta and his GFG alliance. According to parliamentary testimony in court proceedings, some invoices used as collateral came from customers who had never completed a single transaction with Gupta's companies. Invoices backed by nothing. Here's the clever part. Greensill didn't sell these assets directly to investors. He packaged them into investment funds, labeled them supply chain finance, and sold them through Credit Suisse's private banking network to institutional clients seeking safe, low-volatility returns. Those funds held $10.1 billion. Investors thought they were buying boring, real-world trade finance. Instead, much of what they owned were bets on hypothetical future deals, concentrated almost entirely in one highly leveraged steel empire. And to make those speculative assets appear investment grade, Greensill needed insurance. A company called Tokyo Marine covered billions of dollars of that exposure. Without that annual policy renewal, the entire safe product narrative collapsed instantly. He had built a skyscraper on a single nail. By mid-2020, Germany's financial regulator BaFin was scrutinizing Greensill's bank in Bremen. The balance sheet had swelled in ways that made no sense for a simple trade finance operation. Questions were asked. The answers weren't satisfying. Inside Credit Suisse, some fund managers were noticing the concentration problem. Too much exposure to Gupta. Too many assets tied to a deteriorating steel operation. Internal flags were raised. They weren't acted on quickly enough. Meanwhile, Tokio Marine's policy was coming up for renewal. Behind the scenes, the insurer had grown deeply uncomfortable with what it was covering. Greensill tried to negotiate new terms. He tried to find alternative coverage. A London High Court would later find that during these desperate conversations, Greensill actively concealed the true state of his company's finances from Credit Suisse, the bank holding $10.1 billion of investor money. Nobody outside could see any of it. Press releases remained positive. Cameron was still publicly attached to the brand. The Royal Medal still glittered. But in late February 2021, Tokio Marine's actuaries finished their math, and they said no. February 2021, Tokio Marine declines to renew. Not a negotiation, a hard no. Within hours, Credit Suisse freezes all 4 Greensill supply chain funds, $10.1 billion, locked overnight. March 3rd, BaFin files a criminal complaint against Greensill Bank AG for suspected balance sheet manipulation. March 8th, Greensill Capital files for administration in the United Kingdom. March 26th, U.S. bankruptcy filing. 11 business days. One of the most celebrated finance companies in the world, gone. SoftBank wrote its $1.5 billion investment to nearly zero. Around 1,000 jobs vanished immediately. Thousands more workers at Gupta's Liberty steel plants across the United Kingdom faced an uncertain future as their primary lender disappeared. Then Parliament opened the second wound. Text messages between David Cameron and Chancellor Rishi Sunak emerged. The former Prime Minister had personally lobbied the government to give Greensill access to COVID emergency loans, while reportedly holding equity worth up to £60 million. Multiple parliamentary inquiries launched. In October 2025, a London High Court ruled that Greensill had deliberately misled Credit Suisse about the company's true financial position. Director disqualification proceedings were opened against him in 2024. He was never criminally convicted. He returned to Australia. The medal remains. So, what do you actually take from this, beyond the anger? First, the label is not the product. Greensill's funds were sold as supply chain finance, one of the safest instruments in institutional investing. But what was inside had quietly changed. Before putting money into any fund, ask one plain question: what exactly am I lending against? Real, documented transactions, or promises about the future? If the manager can't answer that clearly and immediately, you have your answer. Second, concentration kills quietly. Most of Greensill's book was tied to one client, one. When that client wobbled, everything fell. Always ask, what is the single largest exposure in this fund, and what happens if it fails? Third, prestigious names are not due diligence. A former prime minister, a royal medal, a $1.5 billion bet from SoftBank. These signals made everyone feel safe without doing the actual work. Powerful endorsements are recruited specifically to lower your guard. The more impressive the name attached to an investment, the harder you should look at the fundamentals underneath it. Fourth, for anyone building a company, your story is not a business model. Lex Greensill had a real, compelling reason to exist. But the pressure of a $7 billion valuation forced him to take risks his mission couldn't justify. When a narrative has to grow faster than the fundamentals, the gap gets filled with something dangerous. The farm boy who wanted to help his parents get paid built something real. Then he built something else on top of it. When the second structure collapsed, it took $10 billion down with it. The investors are still waiting. The medal is still on his wall. Every week, another billion-dollar story unravels. Subscribe to Capital Sins so you catch the next one before the crash. And if this case made you think twice about where your money actually goes, click the video on screen. The story of how Credit Suisse itself collapsed under the weight of scandals, just like this one, is waiting for you.